All right, everyone. Well, welcome to another casual stroll through Lord of the Rings Online. This time around, unlike what we have been doing previously, where the community was voting on the areas that we're going to visit next, I thought it would be a great opportunity to kind of use this as a chance to go through a portion of the game that we don't really touch on through our areas, and that's housing. Housing is its own kind of unique little thing. Very soon after the game launched, we launched housing for Lord of the Rings Online. Four different communities in the Shire, in Breeland, and two in Erebor. So this one is going to be focusing on those, on Rohan, on Belfallus, and a couple other little surprises towards the end. Hopefully, too, with there being a little bit less to run through, I'm a little bit less pressed for time like I usually am whenever I'm running these things. I know I get picked on a lot for having to speed my way up through them. But anyways, so for those of you that have not joined this stream before, my name is Matt Elliott. I go by scenarios on the message boards. I'm a senior world designer for Lord of the Rings, and I've been doing this for probably longer than I should be. But I'm loving every minute of it, and I'm having a lot of fun building the world of Middle-earth. Again, for those of you that are not familiar with this stream, it is a world design focused stream. I'm focusing on the landscape, the levels, the spaces that you run around and see, and all of that awesome stuff. I will not be answering any questions regarding things like, class balance, things like game systems, engineering, even some story stuff. I may be able to dabble in some story stuff, but usually I'm focusing purely on the landscape and what it takes to build spaces like this. So, without further ado, we're going to stop in at one of our newest additions to housing, and that's the brokerage office here in Breetown. We had for a while been trying to find ways to, make housing a little bit more accessible to everyone. And I think our solution here was to just have a little office where all of the brokers for each of the individual neighborhoods is chilling out. So from here, you can basically get to any neighborhood that you would want to, and it gives you a sense of what's available in which one. And there are two ways to get into those neighborhoods. You can talk with a broker directly, which brings up your list, which allows you to purchase and visit. Or if you just want to visit the neighborhoods, you can use the ledger, and that will take you directly to the neighborhood itself. The ledgers are actually kind of useful if you don't want to go to a specific house, or if a neighborhood is completely filled up but you need to go to a certain neighborhood, you can use the ledgers to do that. And this space may get renovated, as it is a little crowded right now, so we may need to renovate it a little bit to add a bit more space in the future. But for right now, it's this cozy little space with a bunch of people working together. Not unlike our world pit, at least when we were in the office. So anyways, let's open it up. What neighborhood should we go to visit first? First person that says one, that's where I'm heading. So any of the existing ones, let's start with the original four. First one, Hobbit. All right, B414, we're going to the Hobbit neighborhood to start. This is probably one of my favorite spaces as far as the original neighborhoods go. Let me find my location. That and Dweland, the Falithorn housing, are two of my favorites of the original ones. So as we go, we'll go through. So now I apologize, right now it's raining on my server, so and it's probably going to be nighttime pretty soon, so it's not going to be as pretty as it could be, but ooh, and thunder and lightning, good times. This neighborhood was where I had my first house originally too, and I think my first kinship was in this neighborhood as well. And I'm going to just go up in run speed a little bit, hide the UI, and there we go. So we have these four neighborhoods, and each of them we tried to really impart the style and the theme of the culture in those space, and I think that's something that we try to accomplish with all of our neighborhoods. Is we want to make sure that as far as neighborhoods are concerned, you are kind of living out that fantasy space. Like, this is, this is your quintessential experience of blah. So in the case of the Shire, we wanted to try to have this like quintessential experience of the Shire. This is one of the spaces where we dabbled a little bit with lowering the walls to some degree, so you could kind of see out into the world beyond. I think when we originally built the game and we originally built these, we were very worried about maintaining, the neighborhoods as their own kind of little pocket of space. Some place where they can be and exist without risk of people like being able to get into it from anywhere other than the neighborhood entrances. We are looking into and thinking about ways that we can have neighborhoods exist in normal playable spaces, as something I'll talk about a little bit more down the road. But we wanted to make sure that, we kind of had that idyllic Shire experience. Now, this does still have, this and, all of the original neighborhoods anyways, still kind of have that, old school MMO, air quote, fishbowl effect. So you're still kind of feeling like you're going down a valley. And we tried here in the Shire to like fix that up a little bit and have some lower impassables that at least when you were in the higher portions you could kind of look out and see the world beyond, even see into aspects of it, aspects of the Shire that you couldn't get to yet. Should we ever end up building south and west of the existing Shire, we'll probably have to take a look at this neighborhood and see what we can do to, open it up a little bit more. In particular, we have this like water feature in that back corner over here that will probably need to be adjusted if we were ever to pull down those impassables. I wouldn't be opposed to doing a similar treatment to this like we had done in Archet when that pass happened. So yeah, we have these fields here that are built out to kind of show a greater world. And I think were we to come back in here and kind of rework the space, we could do it a lot better. So as we'll scroll down and look at the couple of questions. So Tally Rian, I think I said that right. If I didn't, I'm sorry. The Hobbit Housing has a red wall instance barrier in the northwest corner. Will that be changed? So the reason why that's visible is because it's running like this. The wall here runs right up to the extent of the playable space. And at least as far as the instance is concerned. So if that is visible, that means that like that's basically the game telling you like the instance, the housing instance, like this is the wall for it. And we don't have a way to really hide that. We don't have a way to really hide where that barrier shows up because it's a programmatic thing. So one of the things, and I will quickly get through this because we still have a lot of other neighborhoods to get through, and I know I dawdle. One of the things that we hope to achieve, at least with these original neighborhoods, was a sense of community and sense of social space. The one of the things that we were worried about was, people buying their houses and then never wanting to be anywhere else. So we were trying to find ways, at least within the neighborhood, to entice people to come to common areas. And that's a theme that we've tried to express in every single other neighborhood as well, where there are these intentional like community gathering spaces where people in the neighborhood could host concerts and parties where they can have all of their neighbors come and hang out, where there are some essential town services that you can get to help further your game and kind of build that around there. Basically try to turn your town centers into like little mini Bree towns. I'm not sure that that's necessarily been super successful, but we try to have a suite of features central to the neighborhood that can, you know, allow players to treat it as a one-stop shop. You know, as we have added more and more features to housing for hooks and for deco items, you know, some of those features have migrated into people's houses, but we still want to make sure that we have this like base selection of town services, so that if there are people that don't want to participate in, you know, microtransactions, or people that don't want to participate in various, you know, events and whatnot, they can still get access to some key features that they otherwise would have to leave town for. Lena Willow says, flooring in the Shire homesteads got messed up with the release of Gundabad. Different floor surfaces, dyes inside burrows won't show now. Is there a bug fix in progress? Yes, that will be fixed in our next bug fix patch. What happened there was we had an artist who was going in and doing some polish work on the Hobbit set, which had an impact on polish work on the structures in Hobbit Housing. Super easy fix, but something that kind of caught us off guard. It's a case of like one file was changed in one place that kind of threw everything off. But that will be fixed. Everything that's in your hooks there will remain in hooked, and you'll just be able to log in and see it automatically working. So while we're in here, we can take a quick look inside one of the interiors real quick. Hobbit houses in general, both in housing and in the world at large, were something that we spent a lot of time kind of going back and forth on. Because in theory, Hobbits should have much lower ceilings, but we did run into the issue where, you know, if we had a ceiling height that was appropriate for Hobbits, we'd often have our camera really, really bunched up close to the players. And we wanted to make sure that players could get their cameras a little bit further away, which, you know, just helps for maneuverability, helps for visibility. So this is where we kind of hit where it's like the ceilings are, you know, kind of standard interior heights. They're more like human-sized, elf-sized ceilings, but we've added the curve to them to kind of give it a little bit more of like a warmer, more claustrophobic feel. Glisten Miss says, can you give us the ability to tone down the white ceilings? Can be too much of a contrast and distract to a well-decorated Hobbit hole. We don't have anything specifically on tap for that, but we can certainly look into adjusting, you know, what is used on the ceiling here. Maybe like graying it down a little bit, reducing the specularity on it so it's not as intense of a color. Because as you can see here, as I move back and forth, you can see the specularity moving along the ceiling, and that can be kind of intense. So I think some of that too is a byproduct of the per pixel attenuated lighting, which is having an effect on a space that we haven't been into for a very long time. You know, one of my focuses basically now through the end of the year at the very least, if not through the middle towards the end of January, is focusing purely on housing stuff. So I'm working down through my list of everything. Ceiling paint, Imonar says, ceiling paint surfaces like wall paint surfaces would be a good addition to housing. It's something that would certainly be a addition that I'm sure people would like. It would be a lot of work to retrofit, just because of the sheer number of houses that exist. And my stance is kind of like, as we introduce new features, I want to introduce it in a limited fashion at first and then roll it back. So, or pass it back. So like, you know, I have, and one of the places we'll be going to where there's a feature that I've been prototyping in there for a while that I'm going to be bringing back into Rohan and maybe Belfallus housing to start as I have time, and then other houses, other neighborhoods after that. So, and that is Shire Housing. It looks like the sun is setting, so we'll head on to Dwarf Housing next as our next destination. And while I load this up, I may sneeze. Hold on. Nope, no sneeze. Okay, great. So yeah, like I'm really excited that the lighting stuff from Rohan Housing was well received and people are excited about it. And it's something that, you know, if I had the time for it, I would bring back into the other neighborhoods. It's a lot of work, especially these original neighborhoods. There's a lot of houses in them. So it's a matter of finding time. So Yao asks, can we have the ability to change windows inside our houses? It's not something that is on tap for right now, in part because each culture's houses are so different as far as windows go, and even some of them don't really have windows per se. So it would be really challenging to basically do a swap on window frames and have things still work well within the theme of the space and with the structures of the space. One of the things that I really was thinking about doing for Rohan Housing was having windows with skyboxes in it that you could change the skybox. But the sheer number of permutations of changes that would have to, like, different skyboxes I would have to make is a bit crazy. So welcome to Dwarf Housing. So Dwarf Housing has, you know, it is an old school cave space that we kind of missed out on using our height map. Actually, did we use our height map tech for this? No, that's right. I think this is the first space that has the distinction of using the dual height map tech that we introduced for Moria. So originally, you know, we were, with all houses, we were hoping to find ways to, like, let players dye the look of their houses, change their surfaces, and we ran into some issues with that, just in terms of, you know, how things were rendering at distance, and, like, oh, you might look at a house from a distance because it's in far view and it would look one way, but then when you get close it would pop into a different way. And I think as we continue to be more comfortable with basically allowing players to have a little bit more control over what their spaces look like, and to some degree, and I joke saying this, but allowing our players to just make their properties look ugly. But I think I'm less concerned now about doing that sort of thing than I used to be, and it might be something in future neighborhoods that I dabble in. Not the next one, but maybe in a future one. So let's see. Any chances of adjusting the task board locations in relation to the task box locations in relation to the boards? So from Little Redhead. So with those, one of the things that I'd kind of like to do is see if I can find a way to change how those task boards just are in general. They clutter up a lot of space. It's a lot of work to kind of maintain them, and I'd like to make them not quite the eyesore that they are. So I have to take a look at those, and I know, like, we're missing a couple of task boards everywhere right now. So I'll need to, like, someone will need to go in and kind of get some updated task boards in. That might fall on my plate. That might fall on someone else's plate. It's still going to take some time to do that. I don't know specifically when we'll be doing that. So yeah, it's on the list, but I'm not sure when it will come off the list and get implemented. Unicorn says, I'm loving your posts on the forums asking for housing item requests. So many great ideas there. I really appreciate reaching out. Yeah, so that was, like, I often see a lot of posts from people asking for this item to be on a house or that item to be in a house, and it's really easy to lose that. Like, there were even a couple of people in that thread that had said, they made a post 2 years ago and it doesn't look like it was seen. It's like, well, the message boards can move fast, or our priorities shift and we're not always looking in certain places, so we miss things. Whereas having that kind of centralized, idea space, I think will be really helpful, and an opportunity for us to just be like, okay, I have a couple of days of free time. I'm just going to go down and page 1. Okay, everything in there is now a housing item. Now we just have to figure out how to get it in your hands. That sort of thing. So I think that's my primary hope and thought with that kind of space is, I can, as I have time here and there, or if someone else has time here and there, they can go in and just cherry pick things out of there to turn into housing items. And having the locations in there definitely helps us too, because it's sometimes hard. Like, people will describe the things that they want to see and they'll be like, oh, it's like this thing here. But it's not always easy to know exactly where to go for that. Has there been any thought to add a way to preview housing items, like how we can preview cosmetics in the dressing room? There's been some conversation here and there about a housing decoration collections panel. I don't know how far it's gotten beyond just the conversations, because there are some differences between how things like pets and steeds and whatnot are compared to how housing decorations are, just in terms of usage and whatnot. Things like clothing, things like the cosmetic pets, things like mounts, those are all on your character, whereas housing decorations you don't necessarily always want on your character. You may want to put them in your kinship house, you may want to move them onto a different character, you may want them in multiple houses, those sorts of things. So there are a lot of those questions about what that kind of preview or collection system would mean for housing, that we haven't had the bandwidth or the time to really sit down and figure out an answer. Glisten Mist says, I asked for Stali's colorful mosaic, but I don't like Stali after seeing him in Gundabad. Well, I will pass those along to Maid of Lydens. He was super excited about the mosaic. That's one of his favorite pieces from the expansion pack, and one of the things that he had the most fun kind of working on and working with. So I'm sure he'll be happy to have elicited such a reaction in regards to his work. So Softsnake asks, are there any chance to get new taxidermist items from the nature of Lotro's open world? So I wouldn't say that new taxidermy items are off the table. I would say that compared to taking existing assets and turning them into stuff, taxidermied items are a little bit more art effort. A lot of times, a lot of one-off deco things that we make are things that we find, are game entities that we find and that we just turn into one. Whereas the taxidermy items would need an artist to go in and build the mount that the thing is on, build the pose for the thing, and then turn that into an asset. So it's a little bit more art intensive and takes a little bit more time. All right, so we're going to pop into this dwarf interior real quick. Something about the squareness of these spaces just makes me happy. So there are windows here, and this is one of the things too, is windows are always tricky because they don't always, based on where the house fit is, windows don't always necessarily make sense. But in order to save our sanity from having to create 20 different interiors, we kind of just were like, and windows are here. Maybe not the best approach, but it's how it is, at least for some of these spaces. Going down through for a couple more questions before we head on to the next one. Any options in the future where we can better decorate our houses outside, like maybe let it snow or snow on the ground? So one of the things that that I am working on that I'm aiming to be present in the next housing neighborhood and retrofitted into Rohan and Belfallus is day file hooks. So you will be able to, within your property, customize the day file that is being used in that space. I have it functioning in my test space right now. I just need a little bit more extra work and a little bit of more extra scripting to make it work in spaces that are not completely square. But the plan is for the next neighborhood to support a new hook type, the day file hooks. There's also another new hook type that's coming to the exteriors of the new housing neighborhood and to Rohan and Belfallus to start in music hooks. So you'll be able to have custom music on your exterior, your housing exterior. All right, so we have made it through our trek in Dwarf Housing. It's time to head on to the next one. Let's head over to Breeland. We'll go kind of, we'll alternate between fantastic settings and more, mundane rural settings. And I need to pick up the pace because we're already a half hour in. Whew. So I'm going to go quick through here. Breeland. Oh, here we go. Breeland is an area that, this neighborhood got a little bit of attention when we did the Legendary Server Pass. So the impassables around it got a little bit of extra love. It's still a fishbowl, but it's a little bit more detailed than it used to be. Let's see. Let's see if I can't. It's going to be raining. All right, let's do some 5. Let's do 8. There we go. So the impassables have a little bit more detail to them. They have a little bit more interest to them. And again, like with the Shire, if we ever end up going south of Breeland, this space will be something that needs to be, touched up a little bit. But we got a little bit more detail into the cliffs and whatnot, so at least they feel more like, cliffs than lumps. And of course, this will probably need to be changed a little bit too. I think if I were to do a considerable overhaul in this space, I would try to connect this body of water to the Midgewater a little bit better, or at all, since it isn't currently. So much like the Shire, this space is a little bit more, rustic, a little bit more simple. I think the Dwarf neighborhood in Thorin's Hall was probably the most complex out of all the spaces, especially with all of the different ups and downs and other ways through. This is a little bit more straightforward, which I think certainly has its appeal. It's also I think probably one of the ones that players might accidentally stumble across while they're out adventuring more often than not. And again, it has the social spaces available in it too, including just, a guard that's dancing. Oh, must be time to... I forgot to have people remind me to take a drink. It's ginger ale time today. All right. Well, let's pop into this interior real quick. So again, much like the Dwarf Interiors, the squareness of the space just kind of appeals to me. It feels like boxy, but it's got I don't know, it's got a structure to it that feels like it makes sense. It feels like it's firm and well built, I suppose. All right, next up, our last of the original housing neighborhoods, and this is the one that I had a lot of fun building when it first came out. This is one of the ones where I was I wanted to push a little bit because I didn't want to have it. It didn't make sense in building it to have it be completely walled off, especially with the river right there. So I was trying to play a little bit with the impassables down here, so that it felt like it was more open. It's actually really nice as you're playing to be able to be, in, Kellendim or in Dweeland and be able to kind of look over and see the neighborhood from there. And again, like all the others, if we were ever to build east from here, we'd want to revisit how the walls are. I think with this space we were kind of trying to give it a Rivendell style feel, because a lot of these assets are things that you can see in Rivendell. We'll go up here, do a quick look out. We'll pop into an interior, and then we'll move right on to the next thing. Because there's Waterbank House. This is 4 Waterbank, not 2. This 2 over here. Let's run over to 2. See if we can pop into Druid's Fire's favorite house. No, this is 3. Do I have to go? That's down to the river. All right, down by the river. I think too, from a construction perspective, being able to have the water progress through and empty out into the River Loon is that feels good to me, just as a from a world designer, because it's this water is actually going somewhere, and I think that's one of the things that always there are decisions that we'd made in the past with our world building that always made me a little sad, because it felt like we were just well, we want water here, but it never really made sense for the water to be here, kind of thing. And I hope that we're better about that with our modern world building. All right, so next up, we're going to go to Belfallus, the first of our premium neighborhoods. And I will try to go quickly through this as well, though I know Belfallus is massive in comparison to any other neighborhood. I think the original ones were built with a concept of 9 land blocks, and I think this one's oh hey, someone has a house here. Oh, do I have a house here? Maybe I have a house here, that's why that showed up. But, I also feel like the size of this kinda is reflective of, Gondor. The scope of it is just this giant, expansive, sprawling space, and that's kind of reflective of Gondor as a kingdom. I think one of the things that Belfallus, and I will be honest, I have not ever actually bought myself a house in Belfallus before. Outside of for testing purposes, but I think one of the things that it's big selling points is, and always has been, the whole idea and promise of you get to own your own castle effectively. You get the view out over the ocean, which you don't get to see the ocean very much, which is I think one of the other great and unique features of Gondor in general, is the opportunity to have those ocean views that are so uncommon everywhere else in the world outside of really Foreshell. You get to see the kinship houses out in the distance, which I want to make my way out to one of those. And I do think too, the idea of owning your own island was a really unique and strong selling point for kinships, and part of what made it really hard for us to made it really hard for us to introduce the Mead Halls as kinship houses, because we didn't have a good way of giving that multiple house option. And we still don't. And our next neighborhood will have kinship houses, but hopefully it is a compelling enough experience for people to want that. I hope. And hopefully we will also get that feature of being able to have multiple kinship houses at some point. Alright, well, it's because of how big and sprawly this is. Maybe someone in chat can help me. Am I getting close to where I need to go in order to get out onto the Kin Islands? I think it's these docks down here, but I'm not certain. So again, we're back to like a social space as well. You know, we've got our far-ranging stable masters, which I think has been a great addition to all of our neighborhoods, and also something that that you can get for your own house now too, in a variety of different options, which I'm happy about. So we will go down here and we'll check out the kin houses real quick. There we go. Boats. Alright, so we'll do this quick look here at Falthwy and then head on to Rohan and get through those real quick. So after Rohan, there's a prototype space that I want to show you guys. And then after the prototype space, we're going to do a preview of the next neighborhood. So stick around. Don't go anywhere. So yeah, like these places are just like, these islands are just massive. And it's one of the things where it's like, I'm always like talking with, you know, other folks at SSG and talking with our team of QA folks and also the Palantir players about housing stuff and how, you know, how we're doing as far as like density of hooks, space, you know, how big is too big, how small is too small. And one of the things that I'm really excited about with the test space that I'm going to be showing off is that it's really a great, like, I feel like it's a great collaborative effort. And down we go. Between everyone in coming up with a good, solid prototype space that kind of represents what the, like, top end of a house could be in terms of density and functionality. So Softsnake is talking about housing areas. Do not put them in the middle of existing playable area like you did with Rohan in the Kingston area. So I still stand by my decision to do that in Rohan. I know some people aren't happy about it. Others are happy about it. I think if we were to do that again, we would try to find a way, and this may be something that's possible in Kingstead as well. We just need to do the work on it and the investigation on it. But try to find a way to make it so that the non-neighborhood instance 0 version of that space is something that can be walked around and visited and played through, and there can be content in that space. I think that is, you know, based off of some of the work that I've been doing in the prototype space and just off of overwhelming interest and feedback from people. I think that's kind of the direction that we're leaning for those kinds of spaces in the future. All right, so let me check questions real quick. So how about being able to place items on porches of the housing instances? You mean in terms of like decoration stuff? You know, I think the hope is that you could move hooks onto those spots. That can be a little tricky depending on some of the items and where the housekeeper is placed. One of my efforts with the new neighborhood is kind of trying out a method of placing yard hooks in such a way that it maximizes the distance and flexibility, allowing for, you know, you to be able to have that greater range of movement. So we'll see how well it works. There's some technical stuff that I have to get through in order to really get that neighborhood nailed down, but that's the hope. So any chance of getting yard slots changed to large small from yard to just yard like it was done with interior slots? It's something that I'm thinking about. The new neighborhood actually has, so we are in West Emnet now. So the new neighborhood doesn't have small yard slots. It only has, it has the huge and it has the enormous ones, but there are no small yard hooks. It's just large yard hooks, because anything that can be used in small can be used in large. So that's kind of a passive consolidation. It's not a solution for everywhere, but it's a solution for at least that neighborhood. And one of my stretch goals is to do the yard hook consolidation. That may or may not come with the next neighborhood, but it's on my list of things to do. Let's see. So Druidfire says, yes, I want a small cluster of crafting stations on my island lawn, but it really didn't work well, so I moved them all into the foyer instead. So it's a shorter distance between stations and banker supplier. Yeah, and I know that there are some limitations on how our yard hooks work, and the stuff that I'm kind of butting up against with this new neighborhood, might be a good catalyst for us to talk about some change here and there, but there's no promises on anything like that. It's all like investigative work. So we have Rohan. This is one of our two most recent additions. So the idea with Rohan is we split it up. Instead of doing one large neighborhood like Belfallus, we split it up over two smaller ones to kind of sell the idea of two different quintessential Rohan experiences. And wow, that lightning was cool. I wish it wasn't raining, but I'm glad I caught that lightning. So the idea being, Rohan kind of has two vital experiences. It's got the Foothills experience, the wooded, craggy, leading up into the mountains, leading up into Fangorn, that sort of experience. And then it's got the open plains. And the idea with each of these neighborhoods was to sell that story, sell that experience in each of them. And I will not be running through other people's homes. So we'll go running up the hill here. And so one of the things that I really liked about these neighborhoods too was the idea of special homes. The deluxe homes are all the same, except one in each neighborhood has a little bit of something extra to it. And so we had way up here on Peak Road we had the Wizard's Tower house. Meanwhile, in let's see if it's been purchased. I don't want to accidentally out anyone on the server. So the Wizard's Tower is up here on Peak Road, and the no one's bought it yet. Sweet. So Peakway up here we have the Wizard's Tower, which was a great here's your most impressive view out over everything kind of space, and both of them were fairly popular spaces. We also wanted to make sure that between the two neighborhoods we were doing something different enough so that it felt like there was an interest and reason for them to both exist. So we'll run up the stairs, open this up, pop in, and then you get your great big view out over everything. Now, this space does have some loose physics barriers. They're not exactly precise, which is it's okay that they're not completely precise. I try to be as precise as I can be, but up here I feel like we wanted to be able to get close enough to do some interesting views. And we also want to let people jump off. And then we'll pop into, let's go to the Mead Hall real quick. We'll pop into that. And then we'll head over to the plains. So we can check that out too. Bloop. Seems like whenever I run these streams, whenever it would be ideal for it to not be raining, it's raining. I think I need to just like set myself up with a command to change the server. I just need to figure out what that command is. Alright, so we're making our way down. Like, still that lightning, I think, is fairly successful as far as environment effects go. I'm really digging it. It's something that was new, that was added, I think, as part of Rohan, or as part of Gondor. And, like, I could just watch a thunderstorm all day. The funny thing about the falling flailing is I think because I've boosted up my movement speed, because I'm moving faster, my flailing animation is even faster. So the Mead Halls were an experiment to see, like, the Mead Halls and honestly kind of all of the Rohan interiors actually were kind of an experiment to see just how big we could make a house for people. You know, originally the Mead Halls were meant to be kinship interiors because we didn't really have a good solution to allow multiple kinship houses. They're available for individual purchase, and then you can kind of set the permissions so that the kinship can come and visit and treat it like a kinship hall. It doesn't have all the same options, but the hope is that it is sufficient enough. I know, like, one of the big points of feedback that we've gotten on it was it was a little bit too big. So, and I think that's the same thing we kind of hit with the plains as well. Like, the interiors are a little bit too big, and so, like, going forward, our future, we might, like, or at least too big for the number of hooks that are in them. So the way we want to think about addressing that is kind of twofold. Like, in future offerings, be a little bit more aware about the size of the space that we're building, and make sure that the number of hooks that we can put in there works for it. And also think about ways we can increase the number of more space-filling items that we have. You know, things that can, you know, better fill a room than a lot of our deco does. And that might mean, like, taking a look at, you know, hey, some of the, you know, arrangements that even some of you put together that are, like, really clever usages of the decorations, and being like, well, why don't we make an item that is a combination of all those items? And that's one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, and something that I might spend some of my R&D time in December working on, is, like, coming up with ideas for, you know, kind of compressing the some of those, like, more unique collations of items into single larger items. So Erica Wildwood says, increase the number of hooks. While we would love to do that, there are certain limitations, and we can only go so many, and we're getting up there. So adding more hooks isn't going to be the solution, realistically. You know, in terms of performance, in terms of load time, like, it's hard to add more hooks when it also adds to the amount of time it would take you to load a space. Things like hook consolidation are a passive way for us to kind of make it feel like you have more hooks without necessarily giving you more. And doing things like having more space-filling items can help that as well. So we're here in the Foothills. I know this is a controversial space because it is, you know, kind of in the midst of what was a playable area. I think one of the things that we're thinking about and might do given the results of research, is potentially tear down the physics barriers on the instance 0 portion of the landscape to allow players into it and to explore it without all of the neighborhood trappings around it. So that's a possibility, and that may open up possibilities for us in the future to do spaces like this where there's content in the space. So with the Plains housing compared to the Foothills housing, Foothills had like bigger single home interiors. Plains housing has two interiors to it. It has a barn and it has a house. So you kind of get, you can, you know, live on a farm. So Agris says, how about allowing multiple items per hook? A good example are all the books collected from pages across Mordor. So while the presentation of it may feel like it is a single item slotting in, like that's really realistically just a new item that has all the functionality of those items put together. One of the things that is on our like research list is to look into ways that we can do like socketed housing items. It's a request that's in there for whenever the time is available to look into it. All right. So we're quickly running out on time. So we'll do our one last non-new space. Now this might be something that players have come across as part of Bull Roar. I'm not sure how visible it has been, but so one of the things that I put a lot of time and effort into is building what I call the test estate. The test estate is just off in the middle of nowhere. This little, this is where I am testing the functionality of things, new hooks, new hook types, the behavior of content happening in a neighborhood space, and what's the other thing? Well, testing a bunch of new stuff. So right now we are in the test estate. It's open to landscape, so you can be in here in instance 0, no problem, back and forth. And the idea being like, hey, can I be in here? Can I log out here? Whatnot, without coming into the wrong instance. If I go into the house that I bought, can I, do that sort of thing? So that's the idea behind this space. The other thing that I'm doing in here is whenever I have a new hook type that I want to prototype, I do it here first so that I don't have to muck with anything that's existing. So it doesn't have to get in the way of anything. Let's see. All right. So this is, now we're in the neighborhood version of the space, and this is me testing just like how many hooks I can jam into here. This is where I prototyped the ambient music outside, and this is where I prototyped the ambient environment hook. So this is going to change, the form of this is going to change, but this is where I started my work on it. One of the things that I want to also prototype is changeable fences, so that you can change up what the fences look like in the space. So that would be something that I do in here. And yeah, so the other hope too with this space is trying to figure out, like, at least for outdoors anyways, like where I want to place hooks so that they can get the most movement in them, and get as close to possible, get as much flexibility and usefulness out of them as possible. Go inside. So how about changing the lighting color or adding seasonal skins for the house? So epic subset. So the day file hook is something that will be useful for doing that. The goal that I have in mind for that is for a couple of things. Allow you to change the day file wholesale. So say you have your house in Rohan and you really, really want the Kellendim day file. you would be able to purchase that day file, hook it on your day file hook at your house, and whenever you are on that property, the day file will be the Calendum day file instead of that. The idea being, too, that you could use it to get certain kinds of days. So if you were like, oh, I really like Shire at sunset, you could find and purchase the Shire at sunset day file, and it would always be Shire at night. So that's kind of the approach we're taking to it. Exterior stuff, I'm still like thinking on different things to do for that, and because a lot of the exterior stuff isn't built in the same consistent way that interiors are, it's a lot harder to do kind of like that kind of customization. Not to say it won't happen over time, but it's going to take time for me to do those sorts of things. So let's see. Are you prototype? So Little Redhead asks, are you prototyping being able to move outdoor hooks into other areas spaces, like putting two things right next to each other? I'm not sure I know what that means. So let's see, going through a little bit more. The day files sound amazing. Sky files work only while you're inside your garden or while in the neighborhood. Only while you are in your own space. So day files and music would only be working while you were in your own space so that you aren't impacting other people around you. The original prototype that I had for music was set up very similarly to how music works on interiors. And the problem with that was music worked when it was, the music box was attached to an item, and as long as that item was loaded, music would play. The problem with doing it like that on landscape is everyone's music box in every house is loaded, so you're hearing all of the music all the time. So I had to change that method. Alright, so we'll do a quick run upstairs. So whenever Bull Roar is up and running, for those of you that are interested in housing, interested in providing feedback on the state of housing, on how we're thinking about where hooks are placed and how their usability works, I highly encourage you to check out the test estate. It's very limited. There aren't very many neighborhood houses available. There's only one house per neighborhood. So it's kind of one of those first come, first serve things. But if it's something you're interested in and you can sneak in and do it, feel free to. One of the other things, too, that we are doing in this space is, every room has, every room has its own set of floor and wall surfaces. So that's something that I'm bringing over into the new neighborhood. So with that in mind, and we're going to run over a little bit, but I really do want to show you what we are working on next. That's why you're all here, right? Before I do that, we'll do these last couple of questions I see. So of Rohan Housing, the main problem with Kingston is the number of hooks are the same as in Hills, but in Kingston it's divided between house and barn, leaving the house with way fewer hooks to use. Combining that with the lack of hooks and so not too much that can be done on that, but it's certainly something that we learned from building that space and that we will be applying in the future to other spaces. So Halbam says, once that comes, I would love the option to disable this. Walking through the neighborhood and having the time of day switch wildly will break immersion. We don't have any plans to filter that right now. It's something that we can add to our list. I can't guarantee that it will be changed by then. My encouragement would be walk on the roads. But at least for the spaces that is going to be retrofitted in, hopefully things are discreetly plotted enough that you'll be able to avoid that in general with some careful meandering. All right, so guess where we're going? Guess where we're going? Assuming it loads. We're going to, let's go to TBD 10. So our next housing neighborhood is going to be Erebor. As we were concluding the Legacy of Durin and the Trial of Dwarves, we felt like Erebor was kind of our last opportunity to do something big and splashy and dwarfy before we move on to other things. So with that in mind, I think Erebor was one of the spaces that people most frequently told us that's where they were disappointed they couldn't have a house. I think there was a lot of expectation when we built the Erebor space that it would come with housing, and it didn't. So we wanted to sell the quintessential experience of living in Erebor, but not just anywhere in Erebor. We wanted you to be able to live in one of Smaug's treasure halls. That is gold down there. That is all sorts of gold down there. And just like Scrooge McDuck, you can swim in the gold. We're still working on some effects stuff for it, but yeah, the gold will be swimmable. Hopefully with some great effects work going along with it. We're still figuring that out. So this is a very early stage of it. The space is built and functionally it works, but there's still some things that we're working out on it and issues that we're trying to solve. But the idea being that, but yeah, you are living in Erebor. So every single other neighborhood that you could live in, every house kind of had its own discrete space. In Erebor, we're treating it just like we treated Gundabad. We're treating it with a bit more verticality. So your house, and someone has this house, so I'm not going to go traipse over their property. You have 6 deluxe houses, 12 base houses, 1 Kinship Hall, and a special deluxe or a special base plus house, which we'll take a look at as we get closer. So each property has each deluxe property has 3 yards, effectively. It's got this upper yard that you step out onto. It's got the lower yard down below. And it has a balcony yard up above, which we can take a look at soon. We're going for a bit of a Wizards of Oz vibe with it. So we'll pop inside here. So the interiors are, similar to how Rohan was. You've got all of the different walls that can be have their surfaces and textures changed. All of the floors can have that same happen here too. Still in the prototype phase, testers have just gotten to this, so the space may shrink a little bit based off of feedback on the number of hooks that are in the space. But in general, this is kind of the look and feel of the interior of Erebor housing. We've got your main staircase that will take you up. So we'll check this out, and we'll pop outside real quick. So this is a balcony. There will be hooks up here as well. Do a quick run up to the Kinship Hall, and then we'll check out the social spaces, at least as far as we've gotten as far as the development goes. One of the things that I'm going to be trying to do is find ways to ease travel through here, or at least provide more frequently placed services than typical, just because this is a very big, long hall. Finding a way for people all the way at this end to more easily get down to the social spaces is something that that we will need to do. So Dagger Thief says, would really love to know how much a house will cost. Right now, we do not have a cost settled on for any of the houses yet. It's all still TBD. That'll be finalized as we get closer to completion of the space. Currently, we are targeting update 31.2 for this. However, there may be some technical stuff that needs to happen, which may push that out. So I don't want to set up hopes too high on that being the exact date that it's going to be available, but that's what we're targeting. Date may change. So the Kinship Hall has has the main strip. It's got 2 side halls, and then it's also got the interior. Each of the sections on the exterior will have its own day file and music hooks available for it. So that means the main section, the left and right wings, the balcony up above, and the lower balcony as well will have all of those options available to it. So this is the interior. We'll go up and check out the cool view, the cool room. So this room is unique to the Kinship Hall. And you got your balcony view here. So the number of hooks in general across all of these neighborhoods is increased from what you would typically get. We kind of use the Rohan hooks as our basis and then tried to push it and grow it from there. So there's a little bit more in here than there were in previous houses. It's not, I'm sure, as many as everyone would like, but it's more. So it should be helpful, to even those things out. So then this is the lower hall here. So this is underneath where we just came in, and you get a view out through here. Don't mind the floating lights. So one other thing that I want to note about all of these houses is I'm playing with permissions a little bit in this. Playing with permissions in that, which way do I want to go? I want to go this way. So we're going to go look at one more house and the social spaces, and then that'll wrap it up. So what I mean by playing with permissions is typically when you buy a house, you can set access permissions for the interior of your house by changing, who can use the doors. All of the houses in Erebor have a front gate, and the front gate will use the permissions of your house settings. So you can lock your yard if you want to disallow people from visiting your yard and visiting your house in general. LLA Land, yes, this is the next premium housing neighborhood for Lord of the Rings. So again, to give a time frame, we're looking at this for our 31.2 update. That may change based off of how development progress goes and how if there are other things that need to happen before this can go live. So the question about from Glisten Mist, question about exterior lighting. So right now, lighting is a little tricky because of how our lighting system works on landscape. I could do a player key light, but then that would make a lot of the lighting darker in other ways, or more flat in other ways. We do have the player ambient booster that you can set on yourself when you're in these spaces. It's not the ideal solution, but there we go. So Eric of Wildwood, will this be an open world space? The plan currently is that it is not going to be an open world space. It's its own little section off of Erebor. There's a reason why I put all those doors there when I built it. Nope. Someone bought this one. We'll ignore that. So yeah, this is Erebor housing. And let me just go here real quick. Let's see if I can get an unpurchased fancy one. So technically it is on the far western side of the Erebor living hall space. I'm going to run even faster, and I'm going to rocket jump over. Bloop. 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 Let's see, can I buy this one? Can't buy this one either. All right, so I'm not going to go in there but this is the special house. It has, actually, I bet you I know where I could go. I can, this is what I'll do. Bloop, 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 bloop. Boom. There we go. So if you've ever wanted to live in a geode, you can live in a geode here. Not sure if I'll be able to get in. No, I can't get in. So yeah, that is Erebor housing for everyone. We're excited to show it off a little bit and to give you all a preview. The idea is it'll be a fully featured neighborhood with social spaces, including a giant chessboard here for the community that likes to play chess. You could do a full-size chess. So yeah, I'll pause for a couple minutes to see if there are any other last questions, but otherwise we'll wrap up. So Soft Snake says, we also upgrade the rest of Inner Erebor with the same colors. TBD, it all depends on time. I would need to have a conversation with folks first as well to see if we really wanted to do that. So why the disconnect between retrofitting older spaces to be open but not the new one? Well, so those older spaces, particularly in talking about Rohan, because it was an experiment in putting it in an existing space, is why there's that consideration. For Erebor housing, it is its own thing off to the side through a door. So it's not in an existing space, and it's easier for us to have it be segmented this way and not feel obtrusive because of that. And I can't leave this one either because I'm not in the neighborhood. But anyways, so last couple of questions before I wrap up. Let's see. So no yard. So Delta Race. All of these houses have a yard. In the crystal space, the yard was, kind of right past the bridge. That was the yard. It was a tier 1 house, so it doesn't have a huge amount of yard space. So it's a tier 1 space so that it still has a yard. Tier 1s don't have huge amounts of space, but it does. So let's see, any fun decorations coming with that? So Halbam, I'm currently working on figuring out what new additions to housing decorations are going to come with this. At minimum, I want to take a look at what we have for all of our dwarf stuff and see if I can hit it with, make new ones using kind of the Erebor art style that we have going on in here, texture-wise. So Shire-themed crafting stations, visiting bankers, barbers, suppliers, possible. Something we can look into. I'll add it to the list. So Druid's Fire says, I prefer blues, purples continued in the housing, not the green going on in the main area. There's already some greens in Moria. Outside of the waterworks, there really isn't much for greens, and it's a very different style of space. I think green isn't like this kind of space, something a little bit more emerald, isn't the sort of thing that we've really done before. So I think that's why we were leaning this way. Soft Snake goes, okay, so where will next housing area be? Well, we already have that planned, but we're not ready to even start working on it yet. So this is what we start with. And let's see, a couple more. I think that's it outside of comments. Listen Miss says, so glad that you have love for housing. Appreciate all the improvements you've given so far. I'm looking forward to the future. Yeah, I'm having fun doing housing stuff for you all. And like I said, that's where my focus is for the next couple of months. So anyways, thank you everyone for joining and taking a look at everything. I'm glad you had the opportunity to see what our next housing offering is going to be. And I'm sure there will be more to talk about that in the future, and there will certainly be opportunities on Bull Roar to check it out as well. Hope everyone has a great remainder of your month. Everyone's enjoying Gundabad and having fun with that too, and is looking forward to the continuing updates we have for that. So thank you everyone. Next stream we'll be back to our regular schedule of picking a region and running through it, so be on the lookout for that poll in a few weeks. Anyways, have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you all soon.